First election that I voted in as an adult was the most important election of my life. But actually, after some reflection, I think that this election, the 2020 election, is the most important, and not just the presidential. For public education, this is the most important election because of local elections, state elections, and then our state senate as well. So stay tuned in this video to learn more reasons why this election is so important, more resources on when to vote and how to vote, and how to vote for pro-public education candidates as well. Let me introduce myself really quickly. My name is Karen Hogan. I'm the White Bear Lake Area Educators Government Relations Chair. I already have voted early by mail, and what's your voting plan?
Why is it so important to vote for pro-public education candidates? One thing at stake is public education funding. 75% of our district's funding is decided by our state legislature. But did you know that adjusted for inflation, public education funding is less than it was in 2003? In 2003, there were big changes to state funding streams, and since those changes, any increase in overall revenue for schools has only been generated by local levies. In general, that means that local communities are bearing the burden of any increase to our schools, and that those who can pass property taxes are doing so, while those who can't have seen significant cuts, not equitable. If we had more pro-public education candidates in our state legislature in both the House and the Senate, this wouldn't be the case. I use the website edmondvotes.org to see my sample ballot and to learn about Education Minnesota endorsed candidates on my ballot to help me plan my voting. All of our votes need to count, so my voting plan is to vote early in person. What's your plan?
Why is voter participation so important? Control of the Minnesota Senate was decided in 2016 in a handful of districts by just 743 votes statewide. 743 votes. If that many voters had voted for pro-public education candidates, we'd have a very different Minnesota Senate today. A Senate that prioritizes public education issues, including adequate and equitable state funding. This year, as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote in our country, I am honoring the legacy of the suffragists who made it happen by casting my ballot by mail. I want to make sure that we don't lose by 743 votes again, and our students get the education that they deserve. What's your plan to vote so that we elect pro-public education candidates November 3rd?
We are a union of 86,000 members, and there's a lot more that we could have done to influence the election of 2016, where we lost control of so many Senate seats. About 743 for senators who were for public education. You're not alone if you had feelings of regret on election night in 2016. We simply cannot allow this to happen again in 2020. We have to have another choice. And with that, you need to go to edmnvotes.org to find a sample ballot to see endorsed candidates in your area. You need to go to mn.sos.gov to make sure you are registered to vote at your polling location. What's my voting plan? I'm voting early this year. What is yours?
To make sure that we elect candidates focused on public education, Education Minnesota has connected the candidates to our issues. They asked every candidate running for office to fill out a questionnaire focused on public education funding, equity, and union rights. They have published their answers in a voter guide that can be found online at edmnvotes.org. That's edmnvotes.org. I know that I found helpful information about the candidates on my ballot. My plan is to vote by mail. What's yours?
We know that Education Minnesota members will vote in this election, but we can't take any votes for granted. So part of the plan is making sure that 100% of members vote on or before Election Day. What's your plan to vote? Have you already voted by mail? Do you plan to vote early or in person? Are you voting on Election Day? My plan is this. I've received my early ballot. I'm dropping it in the mail.
Vote on or before November 3rd for public education. We need to get 100% of our members to vote for public education. But just our Education Minnesota members voting isn't enough. We need each of us to talk to one community member, a neighbor, a best friend, in-laws, book club members, church members, about why voting for pro-education candidates is so important. I'm promising to talk to my run group friend about public education candidates that have been Education Minnesota endorsed. Who can you have a conversation with and share edminnesotavotes.org with?
Local elections matter just as much and sometimes even more than national elections. This year, both state and national elections are really, really important. We, as Education Minnesota members, need to do whatever we can to make sure that public education is supported through funding and through the support of teachers and students. Did you know that in 2018, Representative Amy Wozlowick, who represents part of our school district and for the past 2 years has fought for public education, she won by only 386 votes that year? What can you do to make sure Amy, who's running again, and other pro-public education candidates will win their seats? Every single vote counts, including yours and mine. I am excited to have voted in this election. I already voted by mail and dropped my ballot off at the post office, and I've tracked it, and I can see that my ballot has been received and will be counted. And I'm really excited about that. What's your voting plan?
So together, as you have heard, we, the more than 86,000 educator members of Education Minnesota, can work together to positively change the trajectory of public education in our state today. So how can we do that? Number 1, go to edminvotes.org. Number 2, talk to a community member around you and tell them why voting for pro-public education candidates is so important. And 3, make a voting plan and stick to it. Thank you, everyone.